Hello, welcome back into today's video. We're going to have a look at the weather next week's 10 days. For today's video, we'll also have a look at CFS V2 for the next month as well, actually what's happening with that. We'll begin, though, by having a look at developments in the stratosphere. So, over the weekend, we were getting hints of a sudden stratospheric warming over the North Pole for the final week to 10 days of January. Yesterday, this is all in the GFS output. Yesterday, we saw a little bit of a back off with that idea with the GFS, but it is returning to that idea of a stratospheric warming today, so I'll show you the latest right now. We'll begin by having a look at the temperature in the stratosphere over the North Pole at 30 HPA. This is from the JMA website, Japanese Meteorological Agency. So the black line here tells us where we've been with stratospheric temperatures at 30 HPA, and that's one of the top levels of the atmosphere in the stratosphere over North Pole. So the black line shows where we've been. The grey line is the trend. You can see that until sort of mid-December, we was actually running above average. There's the grey line. That's the average sort of trend line this time of year. We was actually running above average into the first half of December. But in the second half of December, we did have a crash in stratospheric temperatures. That's where we are right now. Still very substantially colder than average over the North Pole with those temperatures at 30 HPA. And when you have cold temperatures over the North Pole in the stratosphere, such as we see there, it tends to coincide with a strengthening of the polar vortex and an increase in the westerly flow, not just across the northern hemisphere, but particularly through the Atlantic and into Europe as well. You can go a bit higher up to 10 HPA, that's into towards the very top of the stratosphere. Again, it's the same idea. The grey line is the trend for the time of the year. The black line is where we've been with the temperatures this season. That's where we are right now. So again, we are significantly colder than average at 10 HPA as we are at 30 HPA in the stratosphere over North Pole. We're looking to get either a warming or particularly a sudden stratospheric warming. And that's where we will take the black line and shoot it northwards like that. My line isn't very straight, but when they occur, they always look very dramatic because they go right up to the very top of the chart. Occasionally, they'll even go off the chart. And when that happens, 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, you can start to send that warmth down into the troposphere. The troposphere is the boundary layer of the atmosphere weather is taking place. And that warmth can set up a bubble of high pressure, a block over the North Pole. And that block is how we push the cold out of the pole down into the mid-latitudes, and it can last for a sustained period as well. Now, as I say, over the weekend, the GFS model was hinting at the chance of a sudden stratospheric warming occurring over the North Pole. Yesterday, it appeared to back off that idea a little bit, but today it's bringing the idea back. So this is the stratospheric temperature forecast for 10 HPA, that top level of the stratosphere. Starting on the 17th of January, this is the very latest 6 o'clock run of the GFS. So these blue and purple colours are showing where we've got those cold temperatures in the stratosphere. We see the green and yellow colours around the edges, but at this point we have still got a very cold stratosphere over the North Pole. If we run through, I'll just run you up to the 18th, up to the 19th. Notice this area of green starting to appear around Europe. So that's the beginnings of the sudden stratospheric warming that this particular run of the GFS is picking up on. Doesn't look like much there, but as I run you through, you'll see very quickly those green colours become yellow and start to move from Europe into Russia. Those yellow colours are starting to push up into Russia, so temperatures are beginning to lift up in the stratosphere across Russia by the 22nd of January, and then the colours just get more and more intense very quickly. By the 23rd of January, we've got red colours appearing across Russia and Siberia. That's a sudden stratospheric warming beginning to take place, and then that just intensifies, and notice it's beginning to push in towards the pole there by the 25th of January. That's a sudden stratospheric warming starting to occur over the top of the North Pole with those red colours infiltrating into the pole. That, if it came off, would see temperatures at 10 HPA lifting up to around that level in the final week of January. It would be really quite a dramatic and pronounced warming indeed. Now, there is uncertainty of this. It's in the extended range of BGFS, although the beginnings of it, interestingly, getting closer. The beginnings of it is just here, in this area around sort of southern Europe, actually, North Africa, even, and the beginnings of it sort of around, see those blue colours, that's around the 18th, 19th of January, that's where it all starts. So that's getting a little bit closer, actually, although the actual southern stratospheric warming is still a very long way away. That's not until around the 23rd to 25th of January. Several GFS ensemble members have been going for this as well this morning, so I think confidence may be increased, but we do need to see the ECMWF starting to pick up on this. So this chart from the University of Berlin website. This is the ECMWF stratospheric forecast for 10 HPA. And you can see that we've got, this is for day 10, which is 18th of January. You can see no sign of a southern stratospheric warming then. That's the top of the North Pole just there. We've got these blue colours around the pole at that point. Notice this area just down here, though. That is sort of off the coast of Iberia and North Africa. That might be BCNGF just starting to pick up on the beginnings of it. We'll know a little bit more in a couple of days' time with these charts, because they only go out to day 10. It looks like the zonal winds are beginning to are going to weaken as well. So this is indicating the strength of the zonal winds over the North Pole at 1 HPA. You can see how quite weak zonal winds through November into December. Then in the second half of December, this big push up in the zonal winds coincided, if you remember, with that very mild run up to Christmas and strong westerly winds then. We stayed really quite strong with the zonal winds into January as well. This black line just here is the forecast for the zonal winds. You can see they are beginning to ease down as we're heading towards the second half of January. Dates on the bottom, so that's the middle of January just there. The zonal winds beginning to ease then, as you'd expect if we start to warm up the stratosphere in the North Pole. So we'll be keeping an eye on that, obviously, over the next few days. GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles the next 2 weeks. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature. We're looking at Northampton today, very close to me. We're starting above average with the upper air temperatures, although it's still quite cold and very grey and murky down here on the surface. We're going to find these upper air temperatures dropping down closer to average in the second half of the week and into weekend. We may have problems with fog later this week, some really dense fog patches coming up. As we get through into next week, sort of a weekend and next week, that's this period just here, dates on the bottom of the chart, of course. We are still seeing signs that weather is turning colder next week, so I think we are going to get a run of quite cold northwesterly winds, and that could well bring some significant snow to northern parts of the country next week. Not sure there'll be too much down in the south, but it will be feeling cold as those winds push out of Greenland and Canada. In terms of rainfall spikes, sort of dry weather coming up till the weekend, and then into next week turning much more unsettled. That's associated with this drop in the temperature, of course, next week, so some of those precipitation spikes could well be producing wintry conditions. Not necessarily for Northampton, but further north, from the North Midlands northwards, I think there will be some snow coming through next week. Surface temperatures are looking like this, starting off reasonably mild, although remember, if we have fog, it is going to limit the temperatures quite a lot. Next week, it looks like those temperatures are dropping down. That's 0 degrees just there. That's 10 degrees just there. So becoming quite cool, or maybe even a bit cold, actually, as we go through into next week, with some wintry potential as well. Temperature anomalies are looking like this next week, the 9th, 17th of January, coming out generally a little bit on the cooler than average side for the UK and Ireland. Fairly cool scene, as it is for Spain and Portugal. Again, it's from France eastwards, but most of Europe remains significantly milder than average. I've got a feeling these are going to start trending colder, though, in the next few days for much of Europe. So if you're in Europe and you've been waiting for some cold weather. I think it may be on its way quite shortly. Precipitation anomalies from the 9th to 17th of January for the UK, coming out generally drier than average. I would think those are going to start trending a bit wetter over the next few days. Here's the GFS then for Saturday. We've got high pressure to our east, low pressure to our west, bringing up this fairly chilly southeasterly flow still. I think the problem at the end of the week, into the start of the weekend, will be fog. But as we go through into the second half of the weekend, this area of low pressure is deepening to the south of Greenland, and that's going to start to bring wet and windy weather in from off the Atlantic. By the end of the weekend, I think could turn a little bit stormy, especially so in the north and the west. So that wet and windy weather will sweep across the country Sunday to Monday. By Tuesday, that the rain is out of the way, but we're in this run of strong and cold northwesterly winds. Notice the winds are coming out of Greenland and Canada, pushing down across the country like that, so it looks really cold there, especially for the north, with wintry showers likely in the north. Then we keep those west northwesterly winds going through much of next week. This is up to Thursday the 18th, for example. Again, the winds are coming out of Greenland, down across the country, particularly for the north. They could be bringing quite a lot of snow with them. Actually, a lot of people think if you have an Atlantic flow, it's going to be mild, but that's not always the case. It just depends where in the Atlantic the air is originated from, because all of this area up here is cold. So if your air is coming out of there, it is going to be cold. It will be modified by the Atlantic, of course, but it will still be cold enough, especially for the north, if the air is coming from that area, to get snow. And I think there could be quite a bit of snow, especially good news for the Scottish ski resorts, I would have thought. Next week. This takes us to day 10, and still looking quite cold even then. We've got, on the 19th of January, we've got the low pressure to the east of Scotland, still bring down these north to northwesterly winds. Even in the south, you wouldn't rule out the chance of some wintry conditions through the course of next week, but I think most of the snow will probably be up in the north. This is how the ECWF is looking for next week. So again, we start off on Saturday with the southerly southeast winds. So it will be fairly chilly winds and probably a lot of fog still in the east. That continues into Sunday as well. By Monday, we're bringing wet and windy weather across the country, and then we go off and running into that cold northwesterly flow, bringing wintry showers to the north, to the west, possibly quite significant snow to parts of Scotland. That's how things are looking running up towards day 10. The winds in from the northwest, got low pressure close to the country, so there'll be precipitation, and it'll be cold as well. That's how we finish up on day 10, which is Friday 19th of January. And we're pulling the winds into the north. Notice, looking a little bit blocky up here, although that's fairly weak high pressure. But even before the sudden stratospheric warming, it does look as though it's turning a little bit blocky there as we go up towards day 10. So quite a cold and unsettled outlook for next week. Finally, just have a look at charts from the CFS V2, broken down into week periods for the next month. The 500 millibar height anomalies for the 9th to the 15th of January, the coming week, look like this. So we've got this big ridge here up across Scandinavia, and we've got the low pressure out in the Atlantic and diving to our south. The jet stream also is pulling down to our south, so indicative of what we've just been looking at, really. After initially fairly dry conditions, courtesy of this ridge, turning more unsettled and quite cold as we're on the cold side of the jet stream. Week 2 looks like this. This is going from the 16th to 22nd of January. Looking cold and unsettled. We've got a trough centred over the UK. We've got a ridge to our north. Let's change the colour. And to our northwest as well. So into this trough we'll be pulling in some quite cold air from the north. So that looks cold and unsettled. Week 3 looking like this. It's the 23rd to the 29th of January. This one is raising heights a bit to the south. Lower pressure to the north, so this is a milder week. The winds will be going into the southwest. Whether this is picking up on any chance of sun stratospheric warming, I'm never sure about CFS V2. And then week 4 rounds it all off, the 30th of January to the 5th of February. We start to move that ridge up towards Scandinavia. So although if we won't look at the temperature anomalies, but if we did, it would be showing a milder than average week because it's seeing the air coming up from the south. But as that ridge is pushing up towards Scandinavia, obviously we'd have to watch out out to start getting the winds into the east and potentially bringing in some much colder air for early February from east parts of the country. Whether, if we get that stratospheric warming, whether this ridge will go further north of that and start centering around here and tapping in some very cold air from the northeast, we would have to wait and see. So we've got some stratospheric warming increasingly probable, I think, as we go into the final week to 10 days of January. So that's the broad thing to keep an eye on. In the shorter range, a lot of quiet weather coming up this week, fairly chilly at times, and I think we may fog out a little bit with this high pressure in the second half of the week and lasting into the start of the weekend. Then perhaps a little bit stormy later in the weekend to start of next week, and then we go off and running into a cold and unsettled outlook, which could bring quite a bit of snow to northern parts of the country next week, and obviously we'll be keeping you updated on that. So a lot to keep an eye on. We'll be keeping you updated through the rest of the week. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.